up, hockey fans? This is episode 81 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke, and as always, joined by my co-host, Sean. Sean, got that reverse retro on again. How's it going today?
Oh, pretty good. I've got the vinegar here. I think we're going to jump right into some saltiness, so we'll make a nice combo right off the bat.
Yeah, you're of course referencing my boy Tom Wilson getting suspended for 7 games for boarding Brandon Carlo of the Boston Bruins. So I know my opinion. Do you want to start off, and then I can lay down the salt, I guess?
Yeah, so, first period of Bruins-Caps game late last week, over the weekend. Tom Wilson goes in for a hit on Brandon Carlo in the corner and catches him high. And it said Carlo's head into the glass. Carlo went down. He needed help off the ice, went to the hospital and an ambulance afterwards. Was released from hospital the next morning, but he'll be missing some time have to assume a head injury. League called it in-person hearing, so held over Zoom the next day, held it that day, and the suspension got announced that evening, 7 games for boarding. It was an interesting one because the league, it sounds like they kind of went and found a rule to apply to this hit, because they couldn't really go for a headshot, but they were able to find that the boarding rule applied, and they suspended him off of that rule, which historically, apparently, the suspensions for boarding are a lot lower than hits to the head. The most recent one, I think I was listening to Elliot Friedman say, was Zach Ronaldo got 7 or 8 games a few years back for a board as well. He got 8. So Tom Wilson gets 7 for this hit. We all know he's a very repeat offender. That obviously factors into his reputation around the Department of Player Safety, into the decision of how long the suspension is, and it's just another one for his resume.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you agree with the suspension, the length?
Yep, absolutely.
Do you think it's the right number?
I think it's, yeah. The rule they applied it under, it fits the length of the suspension in that regard. They can't really go too much more than that because they don't have the precedent for it, I guess. But I think it's probably a fair number.
I think that Tom Wilson gets a bit of a suspension here for being Tom Wilson, which he has done before. I've been blatantly in the league's favor for some of his suspensions, but this one I think he should have got suspended, but I don't agree with the length, because he's coming in. Carlo's kind of like in the corner. He's battling with Vrana, and Tom's coming. He's coasting in. He coasts from the hash mark, so it's not like he's exploding into this guy. He coasts from like the hash marks to below the goal line, and then so he's coming from kind of like, say Carlo, if you're like a clock, right? He's coming from like Carlo's like 7 or 8 o'clock position, right? And he's trying to like hit him and take away body position and get the puck. And the puck's kind of in Carlo's feet. And right before Tom makes impact, Carlo looks down and bends his neck down, and he raises his left arm up above his, like, towards the top of his head or over his head to try and play the puck in his skates. And so Tom comes in, and instead of hitting the guy's shoulder directly, he kind of grazes him, and his hand and his bicep hit Carlo's head. And so, yeah, he gets thrown violently into the glass. And so to me, it almost looked like Tom was trying to like not go for the big direct like 90-degree hit into the boards. He's trying to just take the body, and he's not trying to like destroy this guy. It's just that he has a tendency to go up when he hits, and that combined with the fact that Carlo looks down and raises and does something weird with his body position with his arm, he just gets him in the head. And so, yes, I agree that he should get suspended for this because he's hitting a guy in the head, and a lot of the head contact is not intentional in the NHL, despite what people say online. And Tom Wilson gets a lot of that. He plays a physical way, and he hits a lot. He's like one of 3 players in the league that have 70 plus hits and I think above 15 points. And the other 2 are the Kachucks. And so that's kind of the company he's in. And so, yeah, he hits him. He should let up in that case, but he doesn't really have time. And so he follows through and hits him. And because of that, I think that they're right in calling it boarding because it wasn't really a clear headshot. You know, I know people will probably hate on this, but it's a kind of a hockey play that goes wrong.
Yeah, so I totally see, like, when you're describing how Wilson wasn't aimed directly at Carlo himself, like, he kind of was off to the side. Like, I'm watching that, and I see he's, like, if he goes in, he's not actually going to really make much contact with Carlo. Like, I don't really know what he was aiming for there. And you are right, he does have an upward trajectory through the hit. He does have his arm go upwards, his arm, his shoulder go up, follow on the follow through of the hit. And that's, I feel like there was probably that aim, that trajectory he was on, both like along the ice and also the upwards follow through on the hits, are what made it as bad as it was. If he just kind of like coasted in and didn't really launch himself in, well, I say launch, that has different implications with the NHL around hockey, but if he didn't, initiate the hit as much as he did, if he just coasted into the boards, it probably wouldn't have done anything, really.
Yeah, but he's not a soft player. He's not going to do that. He's going to try and take the body every time he can, and that's the job of a winger, right? Is to get on those defensemen and try and make it hard for them to play the puck and to make them hesitate in doing things. And so he's going to take the body there, and yeah, I think it's just his angle because he's coming from kind of behind him, and he's trying not to hit him from behind. And then just the fact that Carlo moves makes it a dangerous hit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I agree. He should get suspended. Tom has to stop targeting people that are in a vulnerable spot.
Yeah, and I think that vulnerability is a key thing, especially with the boarding rule, when it specifically has, body checking a defenseless opponent into the boards. Carlo's not really braced up for that type of hit. He's just kind of standing there, doesn't have his back to the boards or his back to Wilson that much, but he's not really ready for that type of hit. He's kind of defenseless in the way of preparation.
Yeah, I would say that he's not defenseless. I mean, there's onus on the player to keep your head up and to, watch out for guys coming to hit you, but he is in a vulnerable position, and Tom needs to adjust to the route that he takes to hit that guy, or maybe he just takes the body and, do that thing that everyone does where they hit the stick of the player and pin it against the boards. So he kind of slides in front of him where the puck is and pins a stick, or just lay his knee in between the Carlo's legs and pin him there. So, yeah, there's other things he could have done there. And so, yes, it is a suspendable play, and it's boarding. In my opinion, that's the right call because he doesn't target the head. It's just the circumstances made it that way. And what I am hung up on here is the fact that Joachim Blickfield hits Nathan MacKinnon a couple days before this directly in the head, open ice, and gets 2 games for hitting MacKinnon in the head. 2 games directly in the jaw. And so it's just frustrating that Tom gets an extra 5 games tacked on, and he hasn't been suspended since 2018. And so it's just annoying that he gets that, even though he's not targeting the guy's head and happens to hit him in the head.
Well, there are 2 different rules though. Have to be applied a bit differently, especially with the repeat offender thing.
Okay, but how many times do guys get suspended for more than 2 games for hits to the head? I know this guy's a rookie who hasn't played very much, but he completely misses his check and hits MacKinnon in the jaw, and it's just 2 games for that. I don't know. It's just that's a more black and white interpretation of the rules, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And he got the benefit of the doubt, and in this case, Tom doesn't, and he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt, but it's just frustrating that I think it's a more gray play. It's just frustrating. But the actual suspension aside, the other part that's really frustrating is that not frustrating. There's actually a little bit of delicious irony here, depending on your, I don't know, sense of humor, I guess. But in intermission, Brad Marchand was asked about the hit, and this is a direct quote. "That was a bullshit hit. He took a liberty on a guy that was in a vulnerable spot. That's a fucking cheap shot there." Next game, Brad Marchand cross-checks Ty Smith in the back of the head. No call.
From behind.
And he falls down on the guy as he falls down on him. Yeah, from behind in the back of the head. And radio silence on that. No, the crickets.
Yeah.
So, it was great that they asked him because he's very knowledgeable on the topic of cheap shots. So, you go straight to the source and say, "Oh, Brad, weigh in on this. Do you think it was a cheap shot? Because you also do cheap shots." And so it's just funny that like Bruins fans are up in arms about Wilson being, a dangerous player, and then you've got Jack Edwards just calling for his head, and Vrana, who was battling with Carlo and having to cross-check him when he was on his way down. I mean, it's Vrana. It's not like a crazy cross-check or anything.
Just fell.
But they were just... Yeah, he was kind of like falling on him and cross-checked him in the lower back. And just how upset Jack Edwards was about that. And then, like, the next game, Marchand does that, and it's just, no comment, no call.
Yeah, no comment.
Looking
just
at it.
Just Brad being Brad.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just
that one.
Annoying
that one
there.
is annoying. That one is absolutely frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like that's a play that could be looked at as, supplemental discipline in some regard. But, just Brad Marchand doing his thing, and nothing gets said about it at all.
Yeah, and I mean, my frustration is also with the Capitals, right? Like, Ovechkin spearing Frederick in the nuts, and Wilson doing that. He's trying to get the team energized, I guess, with a big hit near the end of the first period. But, like, they've already missed a lot of their players for significant portions of this season. They need to stop doing stupid shit and focus on scoring. And it's a tight race, and they can't afford to do stupid shit. So part of my frustration with the team, and they're all defending their teammate, which I love to see. Some people might be like, "Oh, well, how could they agree with that?" It's like, well, they're not gonna say like, "Yeah, Wilson's a piece of shit." Like that's their teammate, that's their friend, right? They're gonna defend him. They're gonna stand up for him, and so I like that. And they've won a lot of games without a lot of their players, so I just hope that they can battle through this. And also part of the salt is that I have Tom Wilson on my fantasy team, and now I have to have him just not play for 7 games. So what the fuck, Tom?
The real loss here. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You mentioned how like they're in a close race, they can't have their best players doing stupid shit on the ice, and they're trying to get energy, momentum swing in their favor, but like there's better ways to do that. I feel than targeting with dirty-ish hits and whatever Ovechkin was trying to accomplish with that. Frederick was being a little pest during the game and trying to get in everyone's face, but there's a better way to counter that, and it usually involves Ovechkin putting the puck in the net.
Yeah, I don't want to see Ovechkin get in a fight with some little shit like that and be off the ice for 5 minutes. I'd much rather see him draw a penalty there and get a power play bomb. So yeah, just a bit of frustration there, but like I 100% supportive of him getting suspended there. It's just kind of the length of time is a little bit. It seems like a little bit unfair, but I get it.
It's the Tom Wilson tax,
because it is Tom Wilson. And also I want to give a shout out to Andy Brickley, who is the Nesson Sports color guy. So he works with Jack Edwards, and I absolutely love Andy Brickley, and I think he's a really great color commentary guy, and he's like the voice of reason. So he's kind of like Ron McLean on Coach's Corner, right, where he like brings it back down to reality. And he's always such a like down to earth, like, or like a, I don't know what the term here is, but like
grounded.
He's just such a realist. Like he's not like as crazy and as like Homerish as Jack Edwards, and he's played for the Bruins. Like he's like you'd think if anybody was, it would be him, but he's actually like much more objective than Edwards, and he's actually like knowledgeable, and he calls it like it is, and I actually really like him. But with Edwards, sometimes he goes so over the top that you can't even listen to him. So it's kind of a shame that guy is only on those broadcasts, because I think he'd do really well on some of the national broadcasts.
Yeah, so jumping over to the North Division here, we've got the Ottawa Senators are the cause of another coaching change in the division. This time, the Calgary Flames fired Jeff Ward from the head coaching position. They named Darryl Sutter as his replacement. So a couple of weeks back, we had a little segment about the Flames talking about their apparent locker room issues, the disconnection between the team and the expectations on individual players, mostly around Matthew Tkachuk. We talked about how someone in that room was going to have to step up and sort things out, have difficult conversations, get people on the same page, and if they didn't, someone's going to find there's going to be a change, whether it was a trade, captaincy switch, or ultimately a coach. Darryl Sutter is going to come in again. He was the coach of the Flames from like 03 till 06 or something. Led them to the Cup final against Tampa Bay in 04. And he was also the GM from around 03 until 2010 as well. So he's going to come back to the Flames organization. Sutter retired a couple of years ago, actually, after his stint with the Los Angeles Kings. He said he was going to go back to being a full-time rancher. That lasted about a year until he was brought on as a coaching consultant for the Anaheim Ducks. And then a year or two later, he's back with the Flames. So it's kind of an interesting one, I think, to bring a coach like Sutter back.
I think his reputation would be that he's not afraid to have any sort of tough conversations, and he's coached a lot of tough teams. And so I think that this is kind of a move by the Flames to pick one of those directions we were talking about, how they've got like the like faster skilled base hockey, I guess, and then you've got like the Matthew Tkachuk like battling every night. And I mean, maybe I'm a little uneducated on Sutter, but it seems like he's very much kind of the latter of those two, where he's coached like those Flames teams that had like a Ginla and like Robin Regeer, like Marty Jelena, like those kind of guys. And then like he's coached like the LA Kings when they've won their Stanley Cups, and they were very much a physical team. And so I think it's good that they've kind of gone in a clear direction here. I don't know if Sutter's maybe, revised his coaching strategies or what, but
softened up a bit in his time off.
Yeah, his time on the ranch, he had a lot of time to think. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. Sometimes when teams bring in kind of those guys who were around before, it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. And so I wonder what's going to happen here with the Flames. That they've got not a lot of time to turn it around here. So it'll be interesting to see how fast that they can make any changes in, like playing style or any sort of systems or line combinations.
I think the Flames are typically a team over the last couple of changes that responds very well, very quickly to the coaching change. I think they had a bit of a really quick turnaround under Jeff Ward initially, but then it kind of mellowed out. So I think they'll probably have like that first 10 games that you hear about where they do really, really well, jump back up in the standings. But then it's going to be a case of you talked about the Flames being built as a bit of a more speedy scoring skilled team, this iteration of them. Is Sutter's game plan going to work for them? Is he going to be able to adapt a little bit? Because obviously he's coached and put together grittier, tougher teams in the older school NHL. And there's been a lot of changes in the league over the last few years in terms of play style and just the facets of the game that are more pronounced among the players. So is he going to be able to adapt to that? Are the Flames as a roster going to be able to adapt to what he's trying to preach? And how is that going to work together? Especially with the North Division being as it is, with the amount of offense and the lack of defense and goaltending. Will he maybe be able to find his niche in that division as the gritty shutdown team instead of the contrast to like Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver that are just going to go score 8,000 goals but also give up 8,000 goals. Maybe not Toronto this year. They're a bit better defensively.
Yeah, I think that they, at least on paper, it seems like they could be that team where they've got Markstrom in net because he is back now. They could try and shut it down a bit more because I think that is kind of the issue in the North Division is that there are such good offenses in that division that you need to shut it down and try and play better defense because it's like you got Matthews, Marner, Tavares on the Leafs. You've got the Montreal who came out hot. They've got a lot of scoring lines. The Canucks can score a lot sometimes, 50% of the time. The Jets can score a lot. The Oilers sometimes when they're not playing the Leafs can score a lot. I think if they work, I think that's probably what they need to do is work on their team play, because that seems to be what was missing before, is that they just weren't playing for each other, and literally had Markstrom jumping out of the net trying to chase people down. So, I think he might be used to coaching a Calgary team that has a really good goalie with Kipper in the past. And then he had Quick, so use that goalie to your advantage and turn it around. I think that they've got a shot at doing it. It's just how the team reacts and do they have enough time left in this season to do it?
Yeah, they do. They are at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of the teams ahead of them, especially like Montreal and Winnipeg having played 2 or 3 less games. So they're, other teams have a couple games in hand on them already. And the first 2 games after the change, Sutter isn't there yet. He's still doing a bit of a quarantine period. So they were running under their assistant coach the first couple of games, but they lost to Edmonton and shootout lost to Ottawa. So, they're going to have to really turn it around like immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one good thing for the Flames is that the Oilers really did not have a great week.
Yeah, that's they didn't catch up in that, or they didn't fall too much farther behind.
Yeah, so they didn't slide as much as they could have, because the Oilers scored like 1 goal last week.
One goal in the first 3 games. They got a few against Calgary.
Okay, yeah.
Got to factor everything in
here. Yeah. But yeah, best of luck to them to do that. I think it's gonna be a real challenge to significantly right the ship when you're mid-season and you've only got like 25 games left or something crazy like that, or like
I think they've got 30. I think it's 56 game season, so they should still have 30. You joked when the coaching change happened because they had won 7-3 against Ottawa that night, and then hour later, news release out that Ward got relieved of his duties. What if they had won 8-3? Would that 1 goal have made a difference?
I really wanted to see a shutout. Yeah. I don't know. It is weird that that they won. It was kind of like when the Habs fired Claude Julien. That they got a point that night. They should have won that game.
Yeah.
Because the review of that goal didn't count when they scored like 5 seconds left or something. They should have won, didn't, and then Bergevin came out and said, it's something I kind of made my mind up on and didn't want to wait too long on, and so must have been something similar.
Have to imagine. I think the Flames, it was a matter of their consistency, where it's like they'll go and lose 6-1 or something to Ottawa, and then the next game win 7-3. It's like that such a jump between the 2 different games. It's like you gotta shake something up. Is like the message. Like that level of jumping around of inconsistency just isn't good enough. Yeah, for sure. And it's usually the coach is the first guy to go, right? So it signifies to the team like this is not good enough. We are too good.
you guys are making too much money to float through the games like that. So let's get somebody else in here who can motivate you to perform. At the end of the day, that's the coach's job, is how do we play our games and how do we win every night? And if you're not doing that, get out of here. So, yeah, I don't know. Sutter seems like an old school guy. I want to know how this is going to turn out.
Yeah.
And if this is how long of a fit is this? Like, how long of a stint is he going to have here? Because you were mentioning that you think he may be being kind of bookmarked for another role in the organization, right?
Yeah. So his contract right now is this season and 2 more at the end afterwards. So they gave him a 3-year. I assume it's a 3-year deal. So he's got, I guess that's a fairly standard coaching contract. I guess they don't usually go 1 or 2 years, especially when it's not an interim label. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning because this is basically kind of what Sutter did before, where he got brought in as the coach, and then 6 months later or something, he got added GM to his title as well, and was coach GM at the same time for a bit. It seems kind of fitting. Like, I think Treliving's probably on the hot seat as well, with the team not turning it around or jumping up to the top of the standings as quickly as ownership might have wanted. So you bring Sutter in. He's a guy with experience in both roles, in coaching and in general managing. You bring him in for a bit, get him used to the team on the ice, and see what he actually needs. And then into the season, early next season, if nothing turns around, fire Treliving, and then you bring Darryl Sutter up to the GM spot and let him finish up the rebuild or whatever. That's a complete speculation, I might add, but it just seems kind of history might repeat itself, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he made some pretty competitive teams back in the day, so we'll see. He's obviously won some Stanley Cups, so he knows what it takes to win, but is that reflective of today's NHL, or is that kind of a strategy that doesn't work anymore? I don't know, but it's definitely possible that he could take over, because he is a very experienced guy, and the NHL likes to do the hire the same guys over and over again, so yep. It could very well happen.
So how about looking over to another organization in turmoil, coach on the hot seat in Buffalo, with their absolute downfall over the last 10 games here.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. It's crazy because their power play is like insane. It's so good, and then 5-on-5 they just suck. They just can't do anything. Their power play was like 31% or something. It was crazy good.
It's like as good as Edmonton's was last year.
Yeah, it's obviously not sustainable, but it's they just can't get anything going 5-on-5, and like it's the whole team. It's not just like one guy. It's like everybody. So there's a lot being made about Skinner not performing, and yeah, he gets paid way too much money to do literally nothing. But it's everybody in the lineup. Yep. Like it's Eichel, it's Dahlin, it's just the whole
like the combination
team.
of Eichel, Hall, and Skinner had like 1 goal until Skinner scored yesterday. Like that type of just nothing, getting absolutely nothing out of your highest paid players, your star players, is just, it's telling of just a really dysfunctional environment.
Yeah, I don't really know what they do from here, because there's rumors that's like, oh yeah, people might want Eichel. Well, he makes $10 million and he's doing nothing. He's not playing well. Like, what you're gonna sell him at like his absolute lowest?
Yeah, that would be a very Buffalo move, but it's the wrong one.
And you would need to get an absolute haul for him, because. And I don't mean Taylor Hall. I just mean like a lot of stuff. Yeah, they already got Hall
for him.
Because that's the guy you got when you tanked and got rid of everything. And so you're just gonna redo that again? Like, I don't know. But on the other side, it's like, what? You're not competitive. You don't have great prospects. You've got a good goalie prospect in Luukkonen. They've got Dylan Cousins who's playing. I don't know. Like, it's not looking like there's any sort of long-term solution here. So they're kind of just stuck in limbo land that they've been in since they tanked for McDavid and didn't get him.
Yeah, well, it's pretty telling and almost disheartening just to hear the messages coming out from the players, where it's like we don't know what's going on right now. Like, nobody can figure it out. The players have no idea what's going on. Taylor Hall had that was it a breakaway chance or just a scoring chance?
Yeah, and he tripped on the blue
ice.
line.
Yeah, trips to the blue line, gets up, and just swings his stick and floats back out of frustration. You can just see it on the players' body language. Like, they don't know what's happening, and I don't, Kruger's kind of looking a bit in over his head right now. I mean, I was personally very, very high on him heading into Buffalo, thinking he'd be able to really help turn things around and work well with that organization. But I think he's struggling right now too to figure anything out.
Yeah, and he's kind of like being contradicted by the players. Where Kruger was saying like Eichel didn't get hurt, or he got hurt in warm up or something, and then Eichel said like, no, I didn't. I've had like an ongoing injury or something like that, and so he contradicted what he said. And there's the beef between Skinner and Kruger because he was getting healthy scratched, and Skinner came out and said like, I can't learn anything new by not being out there, basically. And it's like, well, you suck. Like,
yeah, they're
I'm with the coach on that one.
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean, you're getting paid $9 million. You can't even do anything. Like, sure, you can't produce much on the fourth line. Not too many people can, but like, the thing is, you can't get, if you're not going to score, you have to do something. And I mean, Kruger, this is a weird quote as well. Like, Kruger talking about how like Skinner's entire career is measured by his goal scoring or something like that. Kind of a weird statement to have after a guy finally gets that monkey off his back. But that's kind of it's kind of all it is. Like, Skinner's always just been a goal scorer. Like, that contract when he signed it a couple years ago was terrible. I wrote a whole thing about it, looking at like he doesn't do anything but score goals, and he's getting paid. He's like the 10th highest paid player in the league at the moment, and he's got to do more than that. So
yeah, and on the other side of it too, it's like you don't just deserve a spot in the top 6 because you sign your contract to score goals. It's like you're being outplayed by Olofsson, who makes a third of what you do, and he's been putting up better numbers than you, and he deserves that spot, and you don't. And you don't play fourth line because you suck, like, at doing everything else.
Fourth liner needs to do.
So you get benched. Like, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Just because, like, you're not entitled to a spot on the roster just because you get paid a lot. You earn the spot. And in Buffalo, like, things aren't going well. So what's the harm in sitting this guy? Because he's not doing anything. You're not going to trade him. No one's going to want to touch that contract. So,
oh yeah, that's the thing. That's quite a bold move for a player of Skinner's contract and a player of his like reputation to get healthy scratch like that for, was it 5 straight games?
I think so. Yeah.
Like, yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, if you can't, he's a guy who pretty much only scores. I just said that, but those types of guys are probably second line, maybe first line if they're hot. But you mentioned Olofsson's overperforming him, so Skinner gets bumped down into a different spot in the lineup, but he can't do anything to make himself stick in the lineup in the bottom 2 lines. He doesn't do what they need. Of course you're not going to play.
Yeah.
And,
you don't just earn it. Or you have to earn it. And he's not doing it. So, but then again, the whole team is down.
Exactly.
So,
and you can't healthy scratch the whole team. So I guess Skinner just ends up being a scapegoat
as much as he'd like to.
What he produces.
Yeah. I think they're kind of like, they're a little bit hamstrung here because they've got all these contracts. They can't move them. Or they can't really get anything back for them. And they're just kind of stuck, like I said, in limbo where they suck and they can't get better, and they keep signing guys for too much money, and no one's going to want to play there. And there's already kind of like that reputation of like Buffalo isn't like a great place to be. And so it's just harder and harder to attract players to come there. And so you get more like, players that are on like reclamation projects, or, guys that can't make it anywhere else, and get guys like that. And that's not, if you have a whole team of guys like that, that's not a really big winning strategy.
It's just a ragtag group of misfits.
Yeah, and your best player is not playing well.
Yeah, the thing too, you mentioned
doesn't help.
Like the team can't sell him at his absolute lowest, but like he's already kind of expressed frustration with the organization. Does he just say I want out? At what point does that happen? And then the team's he's kind of forcing their hand to have to deal him at a low.
Yeah, I could see that for sure, because he's already been there for a few years, but like he makes $10 million, so there's probably only a handful of teams that can take that on right now, and he's not playing well. And so yeah, a change of scenery might obviously turn that around, but like, you're the best player on a shitty team and you're not playing well. If you want out, like, you should perform, play better. I think that's the best way to increase your value. And if he did want out, he should say that he wants out after he's been playing better. Don't say it now, right? Like, do right by the organization, I guess, because they drafted you. You're the captain. Teams like, or hockey likes that when you kind of like, follow the unwritten rules and stuff. And so the intangibles, I guess. Yeah, it's a tough go though. They've got like the Opozo contract, the Skinner contract. Colin Miller's isn't really great.
Yeah, they just have a lot of money tied up in nothing.
Yeah.
Do you think Kruger is the next coach on the hot seat?
I'd say him or Hines.
Yeah.
For sure.
Easily. I mean, yeah, like another team that's been pretty atrocious is Nashville. And, that's another coach that was brought in. You and I were both like massive question marks. Like, why would you hire him of all people? And
yeah.
they're absolutely atrocious this year.
Yeah, there's some good coaches available too. Like Boudreaux, I don't know how he doesn't have a job yet. Yeah, I mean Buffalo, like usually they'll go on a hot streak to start the season, and people are like, oh, they're for real this year. They didn't even bother to do that this year. They just sucked straight out of the gate.
Yeah,
and like they are in a tough division, but nobody's scoring. And normally they still score. Like they. And so
the thing is, like, they're currently last in the league. This is beyond the type of bad that we usually give them credit for. Like, usually they're like bad, but it's like a mediocre bad, where it's like they just can't do anything much, but they're still not at the bottom. But they're legit at the bottom of the NHL standings right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. And I don't know what they're gonna do next season, because they've got a lot of guys who probably won't want to come back. Yeah, I think it's really just like their defense just sucks. Like, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the Flames, where it's just not, they're not playing for each other. They're not playing as a team. They had that Rasmus Dahlin quote where I don't have like the exact quote, but he was basically saying like someone's got to step up and make a play out there. Like he said like we have to play our balls off every shift or something like that. And like, so we got to make something happen.
And like that's such an accurate quote, because it's like they need someone to come in and like spark plug this lineup, just to give them a rallying point, someone or something to rally around, whether it's like, a big hit or a big goal or some sort of, insane individual effort to keep a play alive or something. Like, they need to find a rallying point, because they're all just completely out of it. Like, they look tired. Like, they just don't have anything really left to give out.
You know what it looks like? It looks like a team full of guys who have the same effort level as Pierre-Luc Dubois' last shift in Columbus.
Yeah, that's telling. That is telling.
Like, that's what it looks like when you watch them. It's just like there's zero offense. Like, they can't make a breakout pass. There's no effort. Like, it just looks like they don't care. and I think I don't know who they'd want to bring in as a coach, but I think they've got to make a change, at least to even like salvage some of these players for next season, because you've got, Taylor Hall obviously on a 1-year deal, Sam Reinhart's an RFA, Eric Stahl. I don't know if you want to bring him back. He hasn't really done anything crazy. Casey Middlestat is an RFA.
Darlene.
Toby Reeder, Riley Sheahan. Montour's a UFA. Dowling's an RFA. Some of their bottom pairing guys. And then both their goalies are UFAs. So, they got a lot of work to do next offseason, and
this could be a very different team come October.
I think they've really got to salvage what they can from the players they have on the lineup, because it's going to be very challenging to attract players as free agents, I think, because they don't have the money to overpay. Because some of the bad contracts, Opozo's still got 2 more years after this. Skinner's got $1 million, and so between those two, they can't overpay everybody. So it's going to be hard to get guys. So yeah, I don't know. It's just tough. At least the Bills are doing good in Buffalo.
Buffalo's got something going
Buffalo
on.
fans can be, because if they weren't, it'd be just a cursed sports city. And yeah, the other one is Nashville. They're, I would say, not as bad. They've got, a couple players that are still doing well. Mainly
they are
Filip
still
Forsberg.
Staying in some games, but not very well, and not to the level that we would expect out of Smashville.
No. And there was that statement that came out that pretty much everybody but Roman Josi and Ellis and Rene are available. And the way Filip Forsberg is playing, they could get a lot for him.
They might be able to get 2 Martin Urats.
Yeah. And then have them both immediately retire after the trade. Yeah, but what would a trade like that look like? It could really, as painful as that would be, could really, reinvigorate that franchise if they sell Forsberg and get some blue chip prospects and some great young players. There's a report that came out that said a lot of teams are kicking the tires on Forsberg. I think the Bruins were in on him.
I mean, a player of his caliber isn't available that often, so there's going to be a lot of teams interested. Not a lot of teams might be able to afford it, but I feel like the right fit and the team that really wants him is going to be able to make the cap space, or the Predators are going to have a weird contract coming back to tie them over through the rest of the year. But that's easily a solid roster player, a decent draft pick, decent prospect. Has to be something like that coming their way.
And he's got a year left after this year too. So
it's not even a rental.
Yeah, so very valuable.
That boosts the value big time.
Yeah, so I think that if they can, they should, because they're not looking super competitive. But man, that would hurt. That would really hurt. So a bit of sad news for, I guess, really just all of hockey is the passing of Walter Gretzky, the hockey dad of hockey dads. Everything you ever heard about Walter Gretzky was just a really, really kind-hearted guy, and
wholesome.
Made time for absolutely everybody, and apparently was at absolutely every minor hockey tournament in Ontario. There's just pictures of guys.
Yeah, if you played hockey or grew up in Ontario, there's a very good chance you've ended up with a picture of Walter Gretzky, because he was at so many tournaments. He spent so much time, meeting young players and talking to parents, and at different hockey fundraisers and events, and just out in the community. He is the ultimate hockey dad. So his loss is incredibly tragic, and it hits so many people close to home that they've grown up in the area and had him at their games, or they've crossed paths with him in any regard, and it's such a widespread impact around the hockey community.
Yeah, it's really sad. Wayne at his dad's funeral said the world would be a better place if there was a lot more people like my dad. And it's just like, yeah, he was just a super kind person and made time for kids and for everybody, and like seems like a kind of guy who wouldn't have a bad word to say about absolutely anybody. And so really sad that he passed, but it was really cool to see the the pouring out of support on social media and everything about it. And like I have friends who live in Ontario, and they posted like photos of them when they're in like Pee Wee or something at like a tournament, and like these are guys that like didn't go pro obviously, but like they've got a photo with him, just like players like PK Subban and stuff like that. They've got photos with him too. So it was kind of cool to see everyone kind of share those moments.
And I think that wraps things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, and share this episode around your circles. For more content, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Clappercast Media, or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more hockey talk.